You're listening to NT Paranormal After Dark. Nothing normal about it.
Hey guys, how's it going? So, my co-host Sarah is going to kill me because initially I told her no podcast this week because of schedule conflicts and stuff like that. But I got off of work a little bit early and decided that since I can't do a podcast tomorrow, like we switched it to, I was going to do a podcast today. And since she's not here, I'm going to do a tech podcast. But, so I just messaged her the link for this live feed, and she's pissed off because she's not on the episode, and I had just told her. But, hey everybody, I see y'all loading in. Hey Marianne, how's it going? Hi Julie. What's up, Emilio? So, since nobody's with me, I'm going to nerd out, and I'm going to do a tech-related podcast because I get a lot of questions about some of the methods we use for the evidence analysis and stuff, and that's pretty much my domain as far as how the debunking process goes, or the evidence analysis. Like I'm the first line in that. Usually I'm the first one to look at it, and then we divvy out like clips and point out parts for the rest of the group to look at, which is what I do. And then a lot of times they look at it and then they send it to me to look at. But when it comes to looking at the footage or analyzing the audio, a lot of the technical stuff that gets done during that process, that's all done by me. Because before I was doing this, I was like an audio tech. So like I used to record my own music. I used to do like small productions. I've worked on film, some things like that, like independent film, things like that. So I know a lot about image, photography, digital imaging, multimedia, and I know a lot about sound engineering. So there's a lot of things that I can do that I think a lot of the other groups don't really pay attention to. So whereas a lot of the other groups, they just go out and they'll capture EVPs and they play them back, and it's like there's a voice where there's not supposed to be. That's kind of where it ends. You know, they don't really take it any further. One of the things that our group does that other groups don't do is going to be audio analysis. And more specifically, the thing we're kind of known for is we do frequency analysis. So we're not only just looking to see if we can debunk the audio and things like that. What we're looking at is when we find audio or we find voices where there's not supposed to be voices, we're taking that audio, we're picking it apart, looking at it under a microscope with software, and we're looking at what is the decibel rating for it. So how loud is it? The other thing we're looking at is what frequency are the tones in. Because and this is important because and my vocal cords are kind of fried because I've been talking all day at work. I had used to, still do. Okay, yeah, I still do. I don't know if I said used to. All I know is, like, my voice is completely shot. So this may actually be a short episode. Also, if you normally listen to this podcast, like, is an audio thing through iTunes or Stitcher or anything like that, this is going to be, even though it's an episode about audio analysis, there's going to be a lot of visual to it because I'm going to actually bring up the program I use and walk you guys through the process I use so y'all understand it, because we talk about it a lot on the show. You know, this EVP was in this frequency, human vocal cords can only make this frequency, blah, 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 but we don't we don't give a whole lot of visual representation about it, and a lot of people ask me how to go about doing that analysis, and it's something I'd always planned on getting around to doing, but I hadn't done it yet. Before it was because of our technical limitations on streaming, but now I have those abilities, and it's just been a scheduling thing. So I'm going to get to it today. A lot of the evidence I've been going through recently has been the investigation we're doing at the old Hood County Jail Museum. Sorry. God, I'm so tired. I had a long day at work today. And like I said, my voice is shot because I've been yelling over machinery all day. So anyway, a lot of that evidence has not been scrubbed yet. Like we've gone through 3 investigations there, and we've kind of briefly gone over some of it. We've looked at some of the photos, we looked at some of the video, and I've listened to maybe like 2 clips of audio where it's something we knew we heard at the time, sort of thing. So we were excited, we went back and wanted to listen to it. And it's stuff that was on the live feed, right? So we've done that, and that's about as far as we've got. There's probably 130 hours of audio and video that has to be gone through, and it hasn't been gone through yet. It's a big undertaking. One of the things we talk about on these investigations is how long we actually stay in the location. Another thing we talk about is how long it takes to go through all the evidence, and it can't be overstated enough that is the longest part of the whole process, is going through it. So by the time we do the last investigation at a location to the time that we've actually gone through everything and made an episode or a presentation for everybody, it's a long time. And then it gets longer if we end up scheduling more investigations during that time. So we'll be doing an investigation while we're still reviewing the evidence from a past investigation. So it stacks up. It's a lot of work. But what I really wanted to go through this episode was kind of show you guys the process for going through audio evidence. And, I mean, the first part of it's really easy. Anybody can do it. So a lot of times we get asked, what equipment do you need to go ghost hunting? What equipment do you need to get EVPs? And you can do it with any recorder. Any recorder. The quality, the audio is going to change depending on what you're doing, but you can do it with a cheap recorder or you can do it with a really expensive recorder. The more money you invest into it, into the equipment, the better the audio you're going to get, and the easier it's going to be to debunk certain things without using any software or anything, because the audio is just going to be clear. The files are going to be more precise, shareable. I mean, everything's going to be more user-friendly. So it is kind of... So while we say you can use anything, like you can use your phone to get EVPs, a lot of people use the recorder on their phone. I usually suggest Voice Recorder Pro is the go-to app for that, only because it has a gain sensitivity built into the app that works through your microphone. And it can kind of catch some things in those other weird frequencies. So if you get to the point that you're actually doing analysis over the EVPs that you're capturing, if you capture an EVP, it's easy with higher quality audio. It's easier to get a good, clean read on that sort of thing, and it's less questionable too. If you're using a cheap, hacky $3 digital recorder, and you're recording in this really low bit rate, somebody just scratching on their sweater and not tagging it can sound like an EVP on a low bit rate. So the first thing I'm going to talk about before we get into any of the analysis is like the recording process. So you really need to have your process down on how you're going to do your EVPs, and we have a 5-second rule. So Sarah will ask the question, and everybody will count 5 Mississippi off in their head. And then if Allie's on the investigation with us, she'll snap a picture after that. And that'll be kind of the signal to go into the next question. And everybody knows not to talk during that part, but if they do, if they sneeze or they shift or they move or something, we have to tag it, and we usually repeat the question. It's really important to have that process in place, because and this happens a lot of times when we have like guests or the host wants to, like the person that owns the location want to help with the investigation. They'll kind of talk through things or they'll cause some false positives. So it's real important that you have a procedure, that you can kind of repeat to new people, things like that. So that's really important. The other thing that's really important is no matter what kind of recorder you're using, you need to record in the highest bit rate allowable. Bit rate is going to be, that's related to the compression size of the file. So a lower bit rate, like if you're going through the options, read the manual, stuff like that, okay? I mean, every recorder is different. Some of them you can't even change it. But if you've invested money into it, I implore you to read the manual and look at what the bit rate is for the recording, okay? So anything over 28K, that's like CD quality, or 44K is CD quality. I think anything over 28K is like better than like cell phone quality, right? Like what I broadcast in for our podcast is over 64, and then it goes up to 128. Now, the higher the bit rate, the more memory that it takes up, because it's using there's more data in the file. But it makes for clear audio, and you want the clearest, cleanest audio you can possibly get, because you don't want to say, okay, this thing here is an EVP, and then somebody that knows anything about audio listen to it later and catch you on your mistake. But in this field, the mistakes stay with you. Like, it doesn't matter how you could do 100 things right. You could do 100,000 things perfect, but the few mistakes you make just follow you, and everybody thinks you're an idiot when you do that, and that's just an unfortunate side effect. And the thing is I make mistakes, everybody makes mistakes, and you have to own up to them, and you have to own up to them very publicly and go back on it. But it's just, if you can avoid making simple mistakes like that, it's going to help your integrity quite a bit, and it's going to make people trust you more when you give them information, and it's just going to make your credibility 100% better. So that's really important. So the equipment you're using and the procedures you're using when you're capturing EVPs are infinitely important, okay? And you have to have those controls and those standards in place before you even start listening to any bit of audio. Once you get done now, okay, you've got all that down, right? And then you listen to your recordings, and you're catching voices where there's not supposed to be voices. Everybody gets that. Every group that's out there is showing EVPs, and they're saying, hey, listen to this. But there's not a whole lot of weight behind the claim. And that's where taking the extra steps in your audio analysis is going to be better, and that's where you need audio analysis software. And everybody asks me what I use and what do I recommend. A lot of you guys out there don't have a budget. This is just a hobby to you, and that's absolutely fine. There is good free software out there that you can use. For free, I recommend Audacity. Audacity can do frequency analysis. It will show you waveforms. There are some things, you can do a lot of good things in it, and you can get good quality audio out of it. And there's really good filters in it. You can play with it, all sorts of things. It's absolutely free. It's open source. It has limitations. It is not, and it's also not the most user-friendly program out there. I recommend it because it is the most powerful free software that I have used. But if you really want my recommendation, and you're really serious about this, either as a hobby or as more than a hobby, and you want to invest money in it, you really need some professional audio mastering software. And that's going to be like Cakewalk, Pro Tools, Magic's software, that sort of thing. And that's what I used to use. Those are, you've probably heard those names before. Those are really popular audio mastering tools. A lot of like recording studios and things like that use that. A lot of that is what they use for audio production on movies and things like that. It's really powerful software. It's also extremely expensive depending on the packages that you buy. So I used to use those. I don't use those anymore because I got in this cycle of re-upping my subscriptions and in buying the updates and the new versions and things like that. And for what I was using it for didn't justify the cost. So I did some shopping around, and I found this really cool program called Reaper Audio. That's what I use. A lot of people ask what I'm using for audio analysis and mastering. It's called Reaper Audio. In it is also kind of expensive. It's not free software. You can get it for like 30 days for free for a trial, and it's completely unlocked. That's great. But for a, let's see, what do I have? For a personal or small business license, it's about $80. I think it's like 65 plus tax. Right? It ends up coming out to about $80. It comes with all the packages. It's compatible with all the Pro Tools plugins, things like that. And sorry, I read a comment and then I lost track. It works with all the major brand plugins, and it updates for life for free. Like, you don't just buy one version of it and then they make you buy another version later. So Reaper's really good about that. It's really cost effective. You can also get a bigger like if you have like a whole team and you want everybody to have their own copy sort of thing, and you want to run it from multiple machines, or you run your own production company, you can also get a bigger business professional, like you have multiple license keys for it, and that's $100 or a couple of $100. But that is hands down some of the best software that I've used. Julie's asking me if the Dragon software is useful. So I have kicked around the idea of some of the speech to text programs to just kind of listen to some of the audio and see if it automatically like kicks out some speech. But here's the problem. Like, I've used, like, as a writer, I've tried using some of the as a writer, I've tried using some of the Dragon software just for general writing. Either because of my accent or because of the for whatever reason, a lot of times it just doesn't work really well. And that's with my human voice, like what it's designed to register with. So I would think that anything it picks up off of like an EVP that I'm feeding it or anything like that would be questionable at best anyway, just because it has a hard enough time handling what it's designed to handle, and it's not 100% effective. So I would be interested to do that experiment, but Dragon software is so freaking expensive. That's not something I want to invest money in when I'm not going to really invest myself in the results that it gets, because I'm going to question anything it gets. I see Sarah's joined, so she's probably going to flame me in the comments. Like I said, she's pissed off at me for even streaming in the first place without her. Hi, Sarah. I'm sorry. I just didn't want to not do a podcast this week, since we just got back into it. And I didn't know I would get off on time. So there's that. Anyway. Okay, so I use Reaper software. It's about $80 for a personal business license. Anybody can get it. It's pretty easy to operate. Having said that, I also have a lot of audio tech background. Sarah has started recently trying to use it, and I have found out I have zero patience as a teacher. So maybe it's not as user-friendly as I think it is. It may be user-friendly because I have experience with it, but maybe if you don't have any kind of experience and you come into it, you might want to watch some of the tutorial videos that are out there, consult some of the online manuals, things like that. Anyway, so what I'm and like I said before, I'm going to show you guys how to do some of the audio analysis, but I am going to skip a lot of the basics on how to just plainly operate this software. Okay, so the stuff I'm kind of going through is more the science in what I'm showing you, rather than like the step-by-step, this is how you do this, this, and this in this specific program. this is kind of generic advice. There's a lot of programs that will do frequency analysis, that'll do decibel analysis, that'll show you the waveforms so you can pick stuff apart, things like that. But my goal is not to teach you how to use audio mastering software. You kind of need to learn that part on your own, but you'll kind of pick up some of that as we go. I mean, even if you don't know how to do that, you should be able to follow along with a lot of this stuff and understand what I'm talking about if you don't precisely know what I'm doing. But at the same time, I'm not going to stop and show you like how to split audio into multiple channels, how to isolate, stretch, slow down, things like. I mean, there's certain things that kind of need to be a prerequisite. So this is kind of a more intermediate to advanced sort of thing, but it's the main thing everybody asks is, well, how do you do a frequency analysis, or what kind of software are you using? What does it look like? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I already have Reaper open. Let's see if I can do this. Boom! Check that out. Okay, so this is what Reaper looks like. Looks like your standard audio software. It might also be good if I brought up an audio file to analyze. So let me navigate on my computer real quick. I can't see any of your comments right now because I'm in another screen. Let's go into my North Texas Paranormal folder. Go to cases. Let's see. Let's find something. I just need a little bit of audio. Damn. I'm losing it. I'm losing my mind. Let's see. We'll just go to... I want to find some clean indoor audio. Let's see. We got Arlington Visitor Center. I'm sure I've got some audio in here. Okay. So I have no idea what's on this. So we have some people watching our live stream. So oh my god. Okay, so that's just me talking. I also need to change my audio output to my headphones. Okay. Here's Sarah's digital recorder, so this should be interesting. Oh god, and it's so weird. I'm not used to doing anything up on this. Okay, so bring you guys back. Let's see what's going on. Anybody else hearing an echo in Brad's voice? No, I'm not. Are you? Hello. Sorry. I shouldn't be echoing. The desktop audio is off. You should only be getting my microphone audio, my sweet, sultry voice. Okay, anyway. So, if you're watching the live feed, that's the video to all my audio listeners from iTunes, right? So this is what Reaper looks like, and you can see I've got registered to Bradley Rogers, licensed for personal small business use. I'm running version 5.32, which I probably need to update this, but I mean, for what I do, everything works fine. I haven't done any updates, so I dropped the audio from Sarah's recorder and just created a track, right? You can hear me talking because we're talking to the live feed at the time, but this is basically like the entire investigation. This is the recorder that she's got going the whole time, and it looks like it clocks in at about 2.5 hours on this one audio thing. Oh shit, I screwed up again. Anyway, so you can see I got this big old audio file, right? And since I'm just working in this one track, I'm going to do this. So these are waveforms. If you don't know anything about audio production, it's audio from the track. Oh! Okay. Anyway, let me see if I can merge this into mono real quick. Input, left, right. I want to do it in mono so I'm not looking at both the left and right channel. Makes it a little bit easier, and I've suddenly forgot how to do that. No, I didn't. It's in here. This is the great thing about live podcasts, is y'all get to listen to me and watch me just kind of fumble around. This is also why I'm a bad teacher, because I don't remember all the steps, and then I have to kind of go back through it and remember. Is it under source properties? No. Screw it. Doesn't matter. Okay. So I'm looking at the left and right audio track together. I don't remember how to split it like right off the bat. So you can, that would be like 2 hours compressed. I usually spread it out. And if we're listening to the audio, it might help if I turn the desktop audio on for you guys.
Guess I was doing something first.
Whoa, what just happened?
What'd you do?
No SIM card?
Okay, so is an example of what a waveform is and how it actually works. Let me try making this a little bit bigger for you guys at home. So all these peaks and valleys, where it's peaked, that's where there's a higher decibel rate. People are talking. Okay, most of you probably already know this. If you've ever messed with the old Windows, sound recorder or something, you know what a waveform is.
Whoa, what just happened?
So everywhere where the waveform is peaked.
Whoa, what just happened?
We're talking. And usually when we're if I can find a spot where she's doing an EVP session.
So I was gonna play a couple of these back.
Can you tell us what happened here?
Okay, here's a good example. So it looks like I think that's Lauren talking in this, which is one of the people that had us out. So they're doing an EVP session right here. And in these big spots where you see like spikes, that's it's big, that's us talking.
Okay, I think the best coming.
Do you know that you died?
So after the question, like I said, we have our procedure down. We usually wait 5 Mississippis, and there should be this long valley right here. God, I keep doing that. I'm not used to using this as a presentation tool. That is my problem, right? So after the question, there's this long period here where you don't see any spikes. There shouldn't be any kind of voices or anything in there because obviously no one's talking. But the shtick is sometimes you ask a question, and sometimes this is pretty much what it should be. Like the little spikes that you're seeing, it's just the background noise, like the air passing the room, shifting around, things like that. If you see
Can you tell us what happened here?
Turn your audio up or the desktop down. You're talking over it and it's drowning you out. It's supposed to drown me out. Y'all are supposed to hear that over me, but I'll turn it down. Anyway, that's what it's supposed to be. Is
Do you
a question
know that you died?
And nothing. What's funny is through my audio, I can hear a clock ticking in the back because the bit rate of the recording is so high. So that's also one of the things. With a higher bit rate, you're going to capture more sounds in more frequencies. So we could sit here and scrub this all day long looking for an EVP, but this would basically be the first step for analysis. Is you look for all the spots that look like there's something there. That's somebody moving. That's somebody laughing, whispering. But EVPs are going to kind of look like that too. So you have to be mindful of what's going on in the recording. But let's pretend that this...
Do you know that you died?
Right? Let's pretend that that's not supposed to be there. The question she actually asked, because it's going to be hard to sit here and go through and actually try to find a legit EVP.
Do you know that you died?
But let's say we wanted to do an analysis on this, right? We want to see what frequency it's in. And why is frequency important? The reason frequency is important is because in some of our EVPs, they show up in a frequency that human vocal cords can't make. So if human vocal cords can produce speech between 20 hertz and 20,000 kilohertz, that's a very narrow, or not narrow, that's a very big margin of what can be produced as speech. The human ear and microphones can pick up sounds further than those ranges. There's a lot of things that fall outside of that. But here's the trick. Sometimes the voices we pick up, yeah, they're in that section of audio that you can hear, but they're outside of what human vocal cords can make. But they still sound like human speech. So that's why the analysis thing's important, because when we run into those are kind of the holy grail EVPs, because it's really hard to explain what could possibly be making those. If human vocal cords can't make speech in that area, but there is human speech in that frequency, then you have to try to explain what's causing human speech in that frequency. And that's when you get into a debate on whether or not it's pareidolia or not. But that's a completely different debate. Anyway, so back to this. So let's pretend that this little section of audio right here that my cursor's on, let's say that's not supposed to be, and that would be huge, by the way, and I can already tell you what frequencies that's going to fall into. But the first thing we want to know is its decibel ratio to frequency ratio, right? So put it up on my other screen. So I'm actually going to bring it into, it keeps throwing stuff up on my other screen. So there's tools built into this program, and they're in different places on different programs. Audacity does this different, Reaper does it different, Cakewalk does it different, Dedicated Pro Tools does it different. You're going to have to read the manual for your specific program, and here it's in the FX set, okay? And the first thing I always look at is going to be the straight spectral analysis tool, which is a visual representation. That's spectral hold. Frequency, spectrum, analyzer meter, right? Wow, it brings up this nifty little graph, right? And so when I listen to things...
Do you know that you died?
Right, it's specifically for analyzing audio.
Do you know that you... Do you know that you died?
Okay, hopefully I can make this... I usually do this on... Yay! Awesome. Okay, so... We want to look at it in the biggest band, where it's broken up into the biggest sections.
Do you know that you died?
There's a little chop because I'm live streaming.
Do you know that you died?
So if you can see the way... Okay, so first off, the graph on the left side, how high each peak goes for the sounds that are happening here. You got to remember, there's different sounds that this is analyzing at different times. The background noise is happening, the air going over the mic, the voice that's talking at the time. it's analyzing all that at the same time. It's not isolated yet. That's the hard part, right? So as it's isolating everything at the same time,
know that
you have all these peaks and valleys. So the up and down part of these peaks and valleys, this is the decibel range. I'm doing a horrible job right now of...
Do you know?
The decibel range is going to be how loud it is, okay? So I kind of paused it. Like, at the loudest part, it's only right here. Damn, I can't see that screen because it's so far away. Hold up. It's like at 18 decibels, right? So that's pretty much speaking. That's like about the range I'm speaking now. That means it's pretty forceful. It's pretty loud. It's got a lot of kinetic energy behind it. It's moving a lot of air over the microphone. Things that go higher, like if somebody was yelling, it would go into a higher decibel range, and the scale would change. The scale would change depending on what I was doing. The scale at the bottom here, right? I feel really sorry for anybody trying to listen to this on iTunes. The scale on the bottom from left to right, this is the actual frequency range of all the sounds that are happening in the clip. So, follow the mouse cursor, okay? So, at this frequency, these are the highest decibel ranges. So, these are the parts that are her voice. All this in here. So as she talks, you'll see this fluctuate more. This is in the 20 hertz range down here. Sorry, I have to flip this back over so I can read it again. Okay. So this is the 20 to, in this line here, is 80 hertz. This marker here on the up and down axis, that is the lowest place where humans can create speech. So if you see fluctuations in here that correlate with the words that are being spoken or that you're hearing, that means that's not created by human vocal cords. That's created by something else. There's also stuff up here in the ultrasound spectrum. But as you can see, like, that's lesser on the graph. Like, the further along in the frequency spectrum you get, the less sounds that are actually created. So there's not a whole lot of ultrasound. There is a good amount of infrasound in here. Or, I'm sorry, infrasound would be below 20 hertz. There is a lot of stuff below what vocal cords can make happening. And a lot of that's going to be like the air pressure, machinery, stuff in the back, things like that. So, and this is just the first step in frequency analysis. There's some other things we're going to get into. It's kind of a drawn-out process, so I probably only have like 3 tech nerds really still watching this. So as you're listening to the clip,
do you know that you died?
Over and over, which you're going to get to a part that you want to listen to because you're going to see some kind of blip in the waveform where you don't think there should be a blip in the waveform. And then you're going to isolate that out, probably boost the volume on it, listen to it, see if it sounds like anything, and then you're going to get to this part. So I kind of skipped ahead. Like I said, I was kind of trying to get to the meat and potatoes of this. So as you're sitting here and you're listening to this waveform over and over and over again, you're watching to see what bits of this correlate with the human speech, which is actually in this range right here. As she talks and the fluctuation of her voice changes, this is the part that you'll see kind of move in sync with that.
Do you know that you died? Do you know that you died? Do you know that you died?
It's all right here. Now, if you're watching the stuff that's below what humans speak, there's not actually a whole lot of interaction that correlates with her voice. It just kind of stays at the same rate.
Do you know that you died?
See how it just kind of, it goes up to one section and it stays. It doesn't modulate. It doesn't peak. It doesn't really valley any sort of part. That's because there's nothing out of the normal going on. So this is kind of the first place where you go to kind of do like a spot check analysis. And so when you're you're sitting here, you're checking your EVPs, and you're looking at it.
Do you know that you died?
And your EVP kind of shows up in this area, like the part that goes along with it shows up in this area. There's a good chance that it's just contamination from you or somebody in your team or somebody that's in the room, something like that. It's a good bet that this is a human that's making it. Now, if while you're looking at this and you're listening to it,
do you know that you died?
In the parts that are peaking are in this area here, which is below the 80 hertz area, or it's up here, which is up in the past what human vocal cords can make, and it's going along with that. That becomes a lot more interesting, right?
Do you know that you died?
Okay, so you've gone this far, and you've kind of spot checked it. You're like, okay, there definitely could be something going on. You know, this isn't the last place that you stop. This isn't where you present it to, you know, NASA and go, hey, I've cracked the code, guys.
Do you know that you died? Do you know that you died?
So what this is doing is it's showing the ambient. Let's see. I'm trying to put this in non-audio technician terms. This is basically the area for background noise on the decibel level, right? So anything that shows up in here is stuff that you generally don't want to fit. Like if you're mastering a song or a movie or something like that, anything that's kind of hitting in this purple area is stuff you don't typically want to filter out, because those are usually the parts that you're trying to put in your movie or your album, right? So that's kind of the average area for, or it's the most common area for things people are trying to produce. So it's like a comparison table, right?
Do you know that you died?
Notice her voice and everything, it all shows up right in here. So that's kind of telling you, like, if you want to master this, it's like a guide for if you're trying to master. If I was trying to master this and I wanted to get rid of the background noise, I would kill anything in the frequencies that are outside of the purple, which would be kind of too loud or too low. Anything up here would be kind of clipping. Anything down here, you probably aren't hearing anyway. So it's kind of a guide for the decibel level. Now I figure out how to do it. So this is, I can manually change the scale that I'm looking on. And if you look, there's things that are in such a low decibel level that the human ear can't detect it anyway, but the mic is still picking it up, which is pretty interesting. Okay, so I'm done jacking with that little bit, right? So you've kind of visually identified that there is something there that needs further analysis, and now you have to kind of tag it and make it digestible. Like you can visually look at that, and an expert can look at that with you and kind of go, okay, and figure out what parts of it are going on. But now you need to kind of make it digestible for everybody. Now I have to remember how to do that part. Let's see. I will remember how to do it. There is a really cool tool in here, and what it's going to do is it's going to color code every part of the waveform. I'm talking so that as to fill dead air while I'm going to move this down here so I can see. That's my real problem. Anyway, what it's tracking color, track icon, track time base, track layout, envelopes. Sorry, dead air. So I'm looking for the setting because I can't remember right off the top of my head right this second. is what it's going to do is it's going to take every bit of waveform in this bit of audio. Actually, as a matter of fact, before I even find that out, I'm going to split this audio up so it is a smaller file for the computer to have to digest, right? Because if it's a really big file, then it's got to sit there and it's got to render all of it, and then it might freeze up the computer, and then I might actually stop streaming, which is not what we want, right? So now I've got it cut down to just the bit of audio that I want to look at. What are you doing? Stop being stupid. Okay, here we go. Now I'm just looking at and see how I got it stretched out. Now you can see the more intricate parts of the waveform itself.
Do you know that you died?
Right? Okay. Now, back to the task at hand. How do I color code? I used to know how to do this. I don't normally color code the audio. No. Jeez, dude, this is... Wow. Shit, I should have looked at doing this before I started this freaking episode. Source properties. Okay, I may have to do this in a part 2, honestly. Track performance. Ah, dang it. I'm going to have to look at the manual again. Sorry, I screwed up. So, anyway, the reason I don't know how to do that is because it's not a tool I particularly use all the time, because I usually use the spectral analysis to get the frequency of the different areas, and then I manually tag it, right? So I would normally do like a split, and then I would color code it, and then I would tag it with the frequency that it showed up in, which is really important for when you're reviewing your audio. A lot of time, and you might have seen in like some of our videos before, sometimes I will go through and I'll use the tool I'm talking about where it automatically color codes every bit of the waveform, and it'll have like a comparison graph that shows you what frequency every part of it's in. So this will show up like rainbow colored, right? And you'll see like all these silent bits, they'll usually all show up green, but there will be these like little stretches, like little parts in here that'll be like purple, orange, yellow, which is showing that that part is in a different frequency than the rest of the room sound, showing that there's something there even though it's at the same decibel rating. So it may not necessarily be a full waveform that you'll see, but those differences in color will tag you that, hey, there's a frequency change there. There could be something else to listen to. And at that point, you would go in and look, and you would compare the frequency. So, anyway, I mean, as far as what the purpose was of this episode, before I forgot totally how to do a part of it, I mean, you guys get the idea. That's what's important about the frequency analysis, and that's why you need good software to check it out. And some of it can be kind of complicated. Like, I work with the software all the time, and I just forgot how to use a major feature of it, and I don't feel like just leaving dead air for another 20 minutes while I figure it out, right? So, I highly recommend this software. And if, in like, that thing I just forgot, it's easy enough. I can just Google it, frequency, analyze frequency in Reaper, and there will be a YouTube video about it somewhere. And you guys will be able to figure that out. But that's that is how we're doing a lot of the frequency analysis, and that's the first step. The other thing is after that, we might scrub it through a couple of filters. Like I might apply some gain to it and see what it sounds that way. If voices sound, after you, like, you always want to keep a copy of the raw file, right? Because everybody's going to want to go back to your source material to make sure you're not altering it or splicing in your own voice or something like that, to make EVPs. So you always want to keep that raw file around. But it is okay to go through, and people do this with, like, their photos too. Like, they're like, hey, this is what it looks like under this filter. This is what it looks like under this filter. The problem is they lose that original file. And so when people send me pictures or audio to listen to, I'm listening and looking at an enhanced version of it, which isn't helpful, because after you have tampered with it, I can't verify that you didn't do something to it to make it not legitimate. Right? So I always need to work off of somebody's raw file. So that's super important. But it is okay to do like an enhanced version. Like, mess with the filters, mess with the bandwidth that's on it. Like, drop the bass out and see if, there's something in a higher register. Or make it to where it's only lower register stuff and see if you still have voices appearing on your audio. And do that with your pictures too. I mean, invert the colors. Maybe certain things will pop out, stuff like that. Just always keep your original file intact for somebody that knows what they're talking about. It's just really important that you document what you're doing, you keep track of what you're doing, and you're mindful about communicating that thing to the end user. Does moving files from one place to another degrade it? It can, depending on the file type. With audio, there's what's called a lossless file type, which is going to be a WAV file. That's one thing that I've kind of talked about at the trade shows and stuff, but I don't think I've talked about it too much here on the podcast. So since I'm talking about audio, I'll get into it. And I should have brought this up when I was talking about bitrate. The other thing that's important is paying attention to what file type your audio recorder is creating. Most things, computers have got better over the years. So it used to be that the standard for a long time was MP3 because it was a compressed audio file. It was smaller. It took up less space. It took less time to download. It was a universal file. It was easy to mess with. Right? But it is not a lossless file. So if you move it around a lot from computer to computer, over time you will lose some data in that. Every time you move something, you lose a little bit of the data, unless it's a lossless file type. The other thing that's bad about the MP3 file type, which I do not recommend trying to do any kind of EVP work with an MP3 file format. And the reason is the way that they made MP3s sorry. Oh man. The way that they made MP3s such a small file type, right? The average song is like only 4 meg, meg a minute. Is what they did is anything that's below anything that's below the 20 hertz, which is the bottom end of what humans can hear, right? Anything that shows up on that file below 20 hertz, it dumps it. Anything that's above 20,000 kilohertz, which is above what you can hear, that's ultrasound, it dumps that off of the file. Now, that's not to say that there aren't sounds on that recording in that spectrum of sound. Take like a bass note plucking a string, for instance. Yeah, the meat and potatoes of that is going to be between 20 hertz and 85 hertz. That's where you're going to hear most of it. But there is resonance sound that falls below that. And while you can't hear it, your body can feel it. And those sounds still make your eardrum vibrate. So a lot of people will listen to MP3 audio versus like a live CD audio or a record or a live record, some other format type. And they can, even though there's no difference, you can tell a difference. And the reason is because that resonance is completely gone. It's chopping off a lot of those things that you can feel with your eardrum, you can feel with your body, and in things like that. And it triggers reactions in your brain, but that stuff is missing out of that file. It also uses a compression method that makes sounds a little bit smaller. So the best way to describe it is a lot of people will listen to an MP3 and they'll say it has like a thicker sound to it, a more muted sound to it. And in fact, our podcast is in MP3 format. Like as you're listening to it live right now, it's in an MP4 format, which means it's also got video. After it goes to our archives, it's in an MP3 format because that's what all the hosting servers want, because it's a smaller file size. They can deal with it better. Okay, so that is a standard format for sound, but that is really bad for EVPs, especially if you're doing frequency analysis. If you want to use a lossless file type, WAV format is .wav is more common. That is a lossless file type. It does not compress the audio at all. It's a completely raw file. Anything that's below the spectrum of human hearing, anything that's above this, anything that's recorded, anything that your recorder can record is going to be present in that file. And no matter how many times you transfer it, move it around, or work with it, it's not going to degrade that file. Well, I mean, unless you like tinker with it, you're not going to, degrade that audio at all. That is the best format. That and APGG, I think. I might be saying that one wrong. Look up lossless file types on the internet. Okay, WAV is the most common one. It works on everything. They didn't used to use it because since it's completely uncompressed and it's lossless, it's a bigger file type. So back in the day of like AOL and 56K modems, downloading a WAV would take 3 days, as where an MP3 would only take 4 hours. But the internet and our computers and hardware and phones are so good now that it takes a WAV like 3 seconds longer to download than anything else. So it's becoming more common to go ahead and use WAV form on like digital recorders and phones and things like that. And a lot of them have options where you can change it because they know you're going to want to record more audio. If you need to record more audio, you might have it set to MP3 instead of WAV. If you want better quality audio, but not as much of it to fit on your recorder, it'll be WAV. Have EVPs been analyzed off vinyl records? Edison, he was trying to record the voices of the dead onto vinyl records. I think Nikolai Tesla was doing that too. Ever since records have been around, phonographs have been around, they were trying to do that, but I don't think there's anything convincing. And since vinyl records have such a low bit rate, it's kind of a bad example, but they are a lower sound quality. They do not possess a high enough kilohertz for it to be valid. Like, it could be anything. And the recording methods that were used at the time for vinyl were not really reliable. But yeah, those lossless file types, that it's really important to use those, and it's also going to mesh better with your recording software that you're using to analyze everything. So that's super important. So I'm wrapping up. So to kind of reiterate what I talked about in the episode before I kind of screwed everything up, is use good recording hardware. Digital recorders fine. A lot of people will gripe that digital recorders aren't good enough. Like, you need like high-end microphone software. A digital recorder's good. Just make sure it's in a high bit rate. And if you're not also videotaping what's going on at the time, if you're doing it for fun, right? It's just your hobby. You're not really getting in depth with it, which you wouldn't be like watching this episode if that was the case anyway. But I just want to put it out there. If you're just doing it for fun, none of this applies anyway. But if you're trying to document evidence, right, that'll stand up, if you're not videotaping what is going on at the time, there is nothing you can say or do. I don't care what the frequency comes back as, what the decibels come back as. If you're not videotaping what's going on at the time and keeping track of what people are doing and tagging your audio and things like that, it's not valid. So you should be recording it anyway, which would mean you're doubling your recording with the video camera audio, which is always good because then you can compare the two tracks to each other. Video camera audio is usually an MP3 format. It has to be a smaller format with modern day camcorders because it all has to fit on an SD card, so it needs a smaller file to mess with. So video camera audio isn't good for doing solely EVPs, but it can be good supportive documentation, and sometimes stuff will show up on it anyway. But it has to be compared to something that is a dedicated audio source that does better audio. So the first thing is you need good hardware. And when I say good hardware, I'm not saying expensive hardware. I'm saying good hardware. It has to be something where it records in a higher bit rate. It has to be something that records in a lossless audio format. It has to be something that's easy to use, that isn't hard to hold, so that you're not clicking around with it and messing with it all the time and contaminating your own audio. Number 2, have good procedures that everybody understands and everybody follows. All it takes is one person jacking around in the other room when they know they should be quiet, not taking it seriously, to make it sound like, to make everyone think they got an EVP on a recording, and really it's just me in the other room telling dick jokes. And it happens. I do it too. I'm a good investigator, and sometimes I forget, hey, they're trying to do audio stuff in the next room. You get bored. It happens. But you have to be mindful of everything that's going on. If you make a sound, tag it. If you know somebody else is making a sound, tag it. As a matter of fact, we've gotten so good about it. On this last investigation, me and Allie were upstairs in the jail cell, recording video. She was running EVPs, which she doesn't normally do. And while we were doing it, she heard a whistle upstairs, like somebody whistling at her, like a guy, like catcalling from the jail cell. And it was like so loud that she asked a question, and she's sitting there and it's quiet, and she heard the whistle, and she tagged it. She said, "Oh, somebody whistling." And then it took her a second, and she goes, "That's somebody whistling. Hey, who's whistling? Somebody's whistling." And we're like, "Nobody. I didn't hear anything. No, nobody heard anything." And it was a legitimate like EVP she captured, but she tagged it because we're so in the habit of doing, and that's good, because she tagged it in the moment that she heard it, and then we were able to verify it. And that's the little bit of audio that I have listened to from that investigation so far. Shows up on the video camera, it shows up on the room audio, and it shows up on our handheld recorder. And thus, we're able to pinpoint the most likely area that the sound originated at, which there was no people or things that can make a whistling sound. So that's actually pretty exciting and a really important piece of evidence that it was noticed at the time. So your procedures are very important. Getting your team to follow procedures is very important. Have a routine. Have set questions. Don't screw around with it. The third bit is good analysis. So do visual. Don't just listen to your recorder, decide you don't hear anything, and then delete the file. A lot of people do that, hobbyists, because they get bored. They listen to it. They don't hear anything. I didn't get any EVPs. That's not always necessarily true. Some of that stuff is at such a low decibel rating that you're not going to hear it without a badass set of headphones. And even then, you might not even catch it. You need decent recording software that converts everything to a waveform so that you can visually inspect your audio. And that sounds so weird, but you want to be able to see all the little peaks and valleys in there, because there's going to be spots where no one is talking, but you might see a little something in there. Or when you change it to flag the frequency colors, there's a frequency change in the middle where nothing's moving. Nothing should be going on. And so you'll want to like zoom in on that, boost the volume on it, which would be decibels, make it a little bit louder so it's easier for you to hear, crystallize it, put like a little bit of effect on it so that you can analyze it for audio. And sometimes you'll find voices in those spots. So sometimes catching EVPs isn't something that you just hear on an initial playback. We do that on our live streams on our investigations, and you don't hear anything on those playbacks sometimes. As a matter of fact, our Needful Things investigation, I played back every bit of audio, and one of the EVPs we caught was on that live playback recorder, but we didn't catch it at the time that we had played it back. It was so weird, and it ended up being like a really cool one. So you need some dedicated software so that you can visually inspect your audio. You need a knowledge of how sound works so that you know what you're looking at. And, I mean, some of that takes a little bit of study. And if you do all those things, you start to get a little bit more credible. The last thing, and I hadn't talked about this much yet, but the very last thing that's super important with your audio analysis, get a second, third, fourth, fifth opinion on it before you just start touting that, hey, look what I caught. And that's where having a team is really important, because there's so much crap that I catch on investing. In fact, one of the we have a private evidence review board on Facebook, and it's just our team members. And that's where, when I'm going through evidence, I post up pictures and audio of things I think could possibly be something, just at first glance. I mean, I do a little bit of analysis here. I cross-reference the pictures, but I just kind of throw it up and say, hey, this looks like it's something. 9 out of 10 things I post on that evidence review board, my group is like, you're an idiot. That's you standing in the shot. No, that's Dawn in the back talking. No, Allie just passed gas. Things like that. That's what's going on. Those second, third, fourth, and fifth opinions are really important, because sometimes you get so entrenched in what you're doing that you kind of lose sight of the big picture. And sometimes it just takes an outside perspective, a little bit of common sense, to just listen to it and go, no, I think I know what that is. Or to look at it and go, no, man, there's just somebody standing in the corner and you lost track of them while shuffling all this crap around trying to figure it out. It's super important. Or somebody else might have some information that was going on. If Sarah was doing the EVPs and Allie was the only other person in the room, and I'm the one analyzing it, and I hear a sound and I think it's an EVP, they might come back and say, oh, no, I remember, I shifted and it made the bed make like a weird noise while we were in there, but I forgot to tag it in the audio. And you can throw that stuff kind of right out the window. The other thing that's really important is when you think you're getting voices where you're not supposed to be getting voices, and you're trying to figure out what they say, it's good to bounce that off of each other without first telling each other what you think it says, to see if they get the same results. And that can kind of help rule out pareidolia a lot, which is super important. So anyway, that's about it. I had planned on just doing a shorter episode. I'm starting to lose my voice now, and I wanted to kind of show y'all a little bit about how to do frequency analysis and like what it is and how it's helping and why it's important, things like that. Sorry, I forgot how to do the color coding. I'll make a small video about it a little bit later. It literally just takes that waveform we were looking at and color codes it to the frequency that is the major part of the sound. You didn't miss much. and it's literally just like right click, and then there's like an option you check, and it does it. I just can't for the life of me find it, so that's a little embarrassing. This was a last-minute podcast, if you can't tell. And like I said before, we are moving to Fridays. The only reason I'm doing this today is because I have a friend in town that I don't get to see very often. Tomorrow's like my only day to hang out with him, so I just want to get this out of the way today. So I hope this helped in some way. I know it doesn't give you the, like, actual technical ability to do it, because I didn't give you like a step-by-step tutorial on how to do this with your audio. Maybe in the future I will do that. I just wanted to kind of do it as like sort of a discussion, explanation sort of thing, to kind of get the info out there, because y'all asked me. But, I mean, to answer the major questions, what software am I using? I am using Reaper audio software. It's called Reaper. It's about $80. It's worth every penny of it. It has a lifetime license. Everything I've talked about in the past and on this episode, you can figure out how to do it through YouTube videos. You don't have to have a bachelor's degree in audio engineering to do it. I am an audio engineer, so it's easier for me to figure out how to do different things, and I have a lot of knowledge, but these are all things that you can learn on your own. Like, you don't actually have to be an expert to figure this out, but in the process you may become an expert. It's if all you're doing is EVP analysis, like you have no interest in sound engineering or trying to make really good mastered videos, or other things that warrant you buying this software, I don't recommend you buying it. I recommend you using Audacity, because at that point you're just kind of a hobbyist. You're not really as into it as we are. It is like a cohesive group, and a lot of people don't want to invest that money. If money's no object to you, I recommend getting that, or Pro Tools. If money's no object to you, get Pro Tools. It can do more stuff than Reaper. Not a whole lot more, but it does have some better options and some better compatibility options, because it's kind of the go-to software for audio mastering. As far as equipment goes, the Zoom, like if you want a really high-end recorder, the Zoom recorders are really good, because it uses 2 mics. They're dynamic coil microphones, condenser mics on it. That's about the best thing you can get. Those are also about $400. If you don't want to spend that, I would go into the kind of $45 range. And I really like the Chemtech recorders, which are also dual mic recording compressor, but it's kind of like a Chinese knockoff brand, but it works really well. And it also records in that lossless format, so that's also really good. So I've answered what kind of software I use, because you guys always ask me that. What kind of equipment I use for audio. I use a Chemtech audio recorder. I also like it because it's got a backlit screen on it, which really helps when we're trying to do stuff in the dark, right? I answered what frequency analysis is and why it's important. So that's about it on the audio front for now, other than just common sense. Just listen to the recording and see if you get anything. Then after that, visually inspect it. So, thanks everybody for tuning in. Sorry if this was a boring episode with just me and my rambling on and forgetting how to do certain things. But hope you had a good time. Next week, we're going to go back to our regularly scheduled program. And I promise I'll have Sarah back on and anybody else that can make that show. And we'll actually have like a topic everybody wants to talk about that's not just, nerdy tech stuff and me trying to carry on a conversation by myself. So everybody have a good weekend. Happy hunting. Everybody be safe. In my neck of the woods, it's kind of cold and wet out, so everybody be extra careful if you're running around in the dark, because, you know, that's how people get hurt. That's how people get hurt, Karen. And you need to just, you know, chill out.
Thanks everyone for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did and you would like to know more about NT Paranormal and our research, please visit us at www.ntparanormal.com or our Facebook page at facebook.com/ntparanormal. You can also check out our book, After Dark Paranormal Investigations, True Cases of the NT Paranormal Team on Amazon.com, or find our articles in Paranormal Hauntings Magazine. Before we go, we would also like to thank our supporters at Paranormal Hauntings Magazine, Paranormal Investigations Equipment, PIE, Ghost House Paranormal, the Granbury Paranormal Expo, and the Tyler Paranormal Conference. Until next time, everyone stay safe out there and stay open-minded.